Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of High Strangeness in the Liminal Abyss. So, we are just 1 week away from Halloween, the greatest holiday, in my opinion. I know there's people out there who prefer Christmas, and you can have your ice and snow and Santa and ho ho ho, but I like my ghosts, my goblins, and everything spooky. So, it being that fabulous time of the year, I'm sure everybody has their jack-o'-lanterns carved and their costumes picked out and their broomsticks ready just to go out. And when you get out on Halloween night, I hope you get candy and not snowflakes and ice, because that's what we're expecting here in Michigan. It never fails. Yesterday we had sunshine and 70-degree weather, and today we have 65 degrees and it's a little bit rainy. The rest of this week is supposed to be sunny and in the 70s. And then next Tuesday, Halloween, they are expecting snow flakes. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I also don't get how my lilacs that have only ever bloomed in the spring have suddenly started blossoming again just within the last 2 weeks. And we have these beautiful purple lilacs blossoming. I just don't understand that one. Are my tulips going to come back up? I don't know. The weather certainly does not know what it's doing, and the plants and animals do not know what it's doing. So the bees that were going dormant and were getting into their, hibernation mode were out in full blast yesterday. So were the ladybugs. And come this weekend, they're probably going to not survive because the temperature is going to drop dramatically going into the beginning of next week. And everything that was ready to shut down and go into hibernation has, oh, it's 70 degrees out, the sun's out, let's go out and collect food, reanimate ourselves. And it's like, no, go back to hibernation, just enjoy the heat. And this, I think this, with it affecting the natural world in this way, I can't help but think that it throws off the cryptids too, because they are very much a part of the seasons and how the seasons work and what they expect with each season. So you can imagine probably their confusion with plants, trees, flowers that they see blooming and prospering in the springtime are suddenly reanimating and doing springtime activity here in late autumn. And I can't help but think that, that might disrupt their patterns of behavior. And this might actually be a very interesting fall going into winter, because we might actually see more cryptid activity, because with the plants acting weird and reblossoming and coming back around, that means that this is going to change the behavior of things like deer, who are always foraging, always looking for a new meal source. And if they are seeing their springtime feeding areas being productive again in the fall, does this mean that they're going to go back to where they migrate to in the spring, which causes things like the Bigfoots, the dog man, to change and alter their hunting strategies and behaviors because they have to follow their food source? So with the deer moving to different areas to get food. Now, of course, we've got the cornfields the pumpkin patches, your late blooming apple trees, all of that's still in production up here in Michigan, at least. And those are all viable food sources for the deer, rabbits, things of that nature. So it might not alter their behaviors too much, because with an abundance of, those food areas here around Michigan, I can imagine that the Bigfoots will probably stay close to those vegetable produce areas, and the dogmen are going to, follow where the deer go. Now, another interesting thing is that pumpkin and pumpkin seeds are often eaten by omnivores and herbivores. The seeds actually act as a dewormer and removed parasitic worms from the insides. So a lot of the pumpkin damage that farmers blame on things like deer, depending on where you live, maybe elk, maybe moose, maybe buffalo. I'm talking all over the country. We don't have buffalo here roaming free in Michigan. Don't think we have moose except for up in the UP, but we do have deer and elk here in the lower part of the state. Certainly, we have cows and horses too, and goats. But some of these, pumpkins that get split open and, everything's eaten out of them, I almost wonder if that's not Bigfoot activity. And I wonder if any of my other paranormal researchers or cryptozoologists have ever thought of putting camera traps around various pumpkin fields to see what is coming in and eating those pumpkins. Is it just deer that are coming in and taking advantage of it? Is it rabbits? Certainly, I know if even there's a small hole gnawed into a pumpkin, everything in the forest is going to come and take advantage of that food, both the seeds and the pulp from the pumpkin and the actual meat of the pumpkin. I say meat, but really the rind of the pumpkin is, you know, pretty much edible for anything to chew on, eat on. It's very fibrous, gives them lots of vitamins and nutrients. So, is it possible that the Bigfoots are taking advantage of those pumpkins, maybe acorn squash, different, squashes? A lot of farmers will grow pumpkins in one area, corn in another area, but within the pumpkin area, they will grow other kinds of squash, acorn squash, spaghetti squash, your winter squashes that keep well into January, as long as they're stored in a cool, dry place, they store quite well. And with a Bigfoot, I mean, we're talking just very, very strong creatures. Even the dog man, very strong. So it wouldn't be that much of a feat for them to pick up and carry 100-pound pumpkin off into the woods and store them in different areas for later. And having that, winter food source, throughout, the season. Certainly would be better than just trying to hunt down deer or relying on their fat stores to keep them going during, the wintertime. So I'm wondering how many other cryptozoologists are actually considering this and considering that people always ask, well, during the wintertime when there's no uh, food sources readily available and they're basically out in the cold. What what do the Bigfoots do? What do the dogman do? Well, There's several different theories. One theory is they do migrate south and, down towards the lower parts of or southern parts of Indiana and Ohio. It is a little bit warmer, and it's possible there's other food sources available. But my thought is if they are taking advantage of these pumpkins, these squashes, apples, corn, and they are piling it into areas that they have created as their home, either tree structures or old abandoned buildings that nobody uses anymore. Because we do get quite a few reports from different farmers that they find all kinds of weird stuff in their outfield barns, buildings that they very rarely use, that they will find animal carcasses of all different kinds, um, just piled up, and they will clean out the carcasses, they will remove them, and within 2 months, there's another stockpile of animal carcasses and bones and various things in that location again. And some people might question, well, if a Bigfoot is so intelligent, why would they keep carcasses around? Well, there's several reasons on that. One is calcium is a very hard thing to find in the wild. We take it for granted because we have, of course, calcium supplements, we have dairy products, we have milk products that you can get calcium from. But out in the wild, not so much. Your major sources of calcium out in the wild, other than plant matter, vegetables that, produce calcium, is bones. And a lot of female animals will find bones and gnaw those bones down to get the calcium out of them. Also, inside of the bones is the bone marrow, which is a very good source of nutrients. That is a almost revitalizing source of food. So if the Bigfoots can find an area where they can keep that cold and preserve it and have that as something to sustain them over the winter months, that's actually a pretty good diet for any animal of bones, bone marrow, the meat off of the bones, meat being anything that is chewable and edible. So muscle, tendons, um, ligaments, any of that. And then you've got things like the pumpkins, the squash, the corn, apples, any other produce that they've been able to collect. I still, in my garden here in Michigan, I still have tomatoes growing, still have green beans growing, still have cucumbers growing. Plus my herb plants are still growing. So, and I just have a small garden. So if my small garden is still producing edible foods, then larger orchards and gardens, um, farms that might not get all of their crop in this year. Um, these are all food sources for those Bigfoots, those dogmans, any other cryptids that are out there, and they are taking care of all. They're taking advantage of all of these things. So I wonder if that's what they're doing. They're taking advantage of the foods that are just left available to them. And what a better hunting strategy for them than to figure out where the humans throw the jack-o'-lanterns when we're not using them anymore, because we know something goes and eats those jack-o'-lanterns. So what do you guys think? Pretty good plan for a Bigfoot. But I'll let you guys think that over and tune in next week because who knows what we'll talk about here in the high strangeness in the liminal abyss. Till next week, stay curious out there.